Okay. Hi, this is Eric Stern from Brainbox. We're here with Larry Harvey, would it be fair to say the originator, basically, of the Burning Man concept?
That's fair.
Okay, we have just two questions for you. We know you're really busy. This has been a huge event. You're probably really tired. The first question is, we deal a lot with utopian themes, and what we're wondering is, which of the kind of aspects of this experience could really be brought out into the bigger world to make the world a more interesting place, and which of them have to sort of remain maybe as a sort of a Saturnalia where you come and have a huge cathartic release and you can only do it once in a while?
Well, I can give you a long answer to both questions. One salient thing that you could, well, let me back up. People come here and they've been telling themselves all their lives that they would realize their vision if they had the backing, if they had the training, if they knew the people. Then they see their neighbors here in this great potlatch of amateurism, and their neighbors didn't have training. I don't know how you have training for this, and resources. Well, they got together with their friends and they shared them, they didn't need to know anybody. We were radically inclusive, and they. So they see that, and they go home, and suddenly they're without excuses. They no longer think that it must be in some sort of symbiotic relationship with an institution. Moreover, what we practice here is I've called a gift economy. And the lessons you can learn from that are remarkable, and far from being visionary in the flighty Cloud Castle sense, they're extremely practical and down to earth. It's interesting what happens. We live in our normal lives in an economy that's based on the exchange of commodities. Market system, and that's good. Commerce is the cornerstone of civilization. But the thing about these transactions is that they do not connect buyer and seller. That's their utility, really. We want to achieve our desires, and we want to move swiftly to them. We want to command the resources of the earth, and the market works well for that. But when you give or receive a gift, it connects you to other people. In fact, it engenders a whole train of relationships that it gathers community, and once that happens, there are some remarkable economies that occur when people organize to come out here. Suppose they're doing something ambitious like a theme camp. They'll say, well, we need. I've got this. One will say, I will contribute this to the process. Then they make a list of further items, and they say, well, I know someone who's got that, and they'll bring them in, and that person will say, oh, this is great. I'll give this to you, and then they are then part of that community. And it turns out communities, when they operate together, just like immigrant families, really have a remarkable way of discovering resources that didn't exist, especially in so wasteful a society as our own. So what a gift economy within a context of a community does is it creates new value. It assigns value to things that otherwise wouldn't have it. It's extremely, if you depend on, someone will say, well, there's a bunch of PVC down the street in this lot, and nobody wants it, and the kids are starting to smash it up, but I'll load up my truck and I'll bring it over. And Americans have been taught that live in increasingly in radical isolation from one another, because that serves the whole apparatus of consumption and production in this country, and to the degree you can make people passive, so we stimulate their desires to be filled, because they feel empty, and so we sell them images of their desire that are inherently unfulfilling, and that stimulates a boundless and never-ending appetite and an extremely wasteful use of resources. The experience within a community is not only spiritually grounding, but it tends to be based on need, and it tends to be as manifold and inquiring in its search for resources as are those members of that group. And we think we're free, and we all live in credit card debt. We think we have to buy everything at Home Depot. You know, if most of the people who made the things out here had to buy it all out of Home Depot, it would have been beyond their reach. They wouldn't have had enough money. And but the resources of a community a community discovers resources everywhere. Now that's something that you can bring back, and you can apply that not only to some kind of a fantastic or artistic scheme, but you can apply it to the way you earn your living. You can apply it to your livelihood. Hundreds of people will quit their jobs as a result of this event, emboldened by the idea that perhaps they could reorganize their lives in such a way that they could sustain a vision and sustain their lives. Now that's something that's a lesson that can be taken back, and a very practical one. There's another experience that can't be taken back, but it's equally well, can be taken back, but it couldn't be. But it's specific to this time and place, and this is a rite of passage. It's in one aspect, it's a kind of Saturnalia. It's certainly an opportunity to escape your social role in society at large, and play at being new things, and that, of course, has been the function and purpose of rites of passage in all societies. And there's not a culture on Earth without them, except perhaps our own now.
Yeah. I was going to say, is there anything? There doesn't seem to be any comparable rite of passage, except maybe being 16 and getting a car. That doesn't really compare.
It doesn't really compare. And anthropologists have studied the process, and there's one idea that I've gleaned, and I think what happens here, that all of this surreal, fantastic, lunatic behavior, in a sense, serves a very practical social purpose. We know that in nature, mutations are happening all the time, and most of them aren't really useful to the survival of the species, but a crucial few are. And of course, without that continual variation that is selected within a natural regime, the life would be impossible, and we would not be fully alive. And I think the same thing applies to societies and the production of culture. We essentially invite people to come out here and be a new way. Perhaps the more irrational that impulse, the better.
So it's sort of a
more radical, the leap off the ladder into uncreated being, the better. And it's a chance. There's a vast willing suspension of disbelief here, in which everyone can use the blank canvas of the desert to project something of themselves out into the world and embody it in a role that was never assigned to them, and that perhaps they never dreamt of. Now, that's a very useful thing. Here's what happens. Every year, people will innovate wonderfully creative things, and others will in the next year, one innovation will breed 10 more.
Right.
And there's a geometric increase, and not only will they imitate, but they'll do more than that. They'll emulate, which means that in many cases, then they'll exceed the model. And if it's something that someone does out of their uniqueness that resonates through the whole entire community, I will guarantee you that will happen. That's how culture is born. And in fact, this process that we're going, the rites of passage, one function they have is to innovate new culture, and to audition modes of being that never imagined that may indeed prove useful and visionary guides to us all. And in the world at large, which is much, in the world at large, that process is not going forward. It's a spontaneously occurring, self-organizing process. It's a natural phenomenon that occurs in human populations. It's called culture. And all we do here is plan a society that serves as a fit framework to foster that process.
So this is like the petri dish that sort of breeds the very fast evolution of ideas, basically?
I think we need to get conscious about the conditions that culture needs in order to thrive. Right now, all that happens in society at large is when bits of culture self-organize, usually out of communities, ironically today out of communities, if you look at rap music, who live in poverty and isolation, who are forced to entertain themselves, imitate one another, emulate one another, but I think that today, as bits of culture emerge out of nascent communities, they're systematically seized upon and exploited and turned into products, denatured, extracted from their context and community and history, and within a short turned into fads, and with a short time so denatured that they're exterminated. We're on the verge of losing the capacity to create culture, and so we're creating a model solely designed for its form is beginning to beautifully match its function, solely designed to engender that process, and now that model can be taken as we rationalize, as we learn more and more what it is. Because this is an empirical experiment. That model can be taken from this radically utopian context, and then applied, I think, to virtually all of the problems that beset the world right now.
Okay, so this model could be used to incubate the ideas that will help basically solve some of the problems of the world.
Problems. For instance, many of us, there are no liberals anymore, and conservatives are puzzled. We've all come to doubt the capacity of bureaucracies and managerial techniques to solve our social problems in many cases. We engender a community process which is self-organizing that actually addresses many of those things in the world of Black Rock City. You see, culture is more complex and more inwrought and a more sensitive and complex instrument than any plan. And you need plans for various things. We have plans. We have a hierarchy in our organization, but we use those tools sparingly. And we use them for the purpose of creating another, more organic kind of organization. And if we begin to think that way in our society at large, I think we'll find that many of the problems that have been not susceptible to solution from the inside out can be solved ultimately if we have enough faith to believe in this process that occurs from the or rather the other way around, from the inside out. After all, a farmer plants his crops and plows his furrows straight and assembles his fertilizers and struggles to control things, but he is ultimately dependent on and obliged to the process of growth in nature, which of course essentially produces the product itself.
So in a way, you'd think that of yourself as sort of a farmer of culture?
Well, I guess we are. Yeah, we are sort of tilling this barren, alkaline, sterile plain. What a crop we've raised.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I just have one other question. That was a very nice answer. This is just a basic background question that everybody wants to know. How did the event get started? Everybody vaguely has heard that it came from a burning of a man on a beach in San Francisco many years ago, and that person has been variously described as being maybe an ex or an ex's new lover or a lawyer is the other one I've heard, which is kind of strange. Is there any truth to any of those rumors? Have you ever heard the lawyer?
I know I actually floated that one. That originated in me. I thought I'd make it triply absurd. Not really. You know, people ask. They ask me what my intention was, as if in my intention they'll find the germ of the meaning of it. In a way that's, in one sense, if you look at how this has evolved historically within a society, including many more people than myself, seeking for the essence of it in my first act is a little like searching for the headwaters of a great river. Finally, the tributary that is farthest, the little trickle of water that is farthest from the mouth of that great flow, is deemed to be its source.
Yeah.
But that's a polite fiction that we observe so that explorers may claim credit.
Right.
Although there is a sense. And what I did on that day at the beach is what out here, of course, would be a routine act of radical self-expression. But there is a sense in which the initial burning of the first man did contain in itself the germ of those things that were to come. But it didn't. That isn't so much a matter of my personal intention. I can tell you what really happened.
Okay.
I called a friend. I said, "Let's build a man." We built him in an afternoon and took him to the beach. He was 7 feet tall, and we lit fire to him. At that point, at which the man was lit on fire, something happened. People came running from the north and the south, from all over the beach, and they converged around this figure. And there's no attractant like a human figure on fire. And they surrounded it, formed this arc of fire-lit faces, and what had been created. Suddenly, our numbers tripled. It's the first exponential increase of Burning Man. And that familiar growth curve that we've come to be familiar with. And at that point, a woman ran up, and the wind was shunting the flames to one side, and she took his hand like a confident bride, and she played with him. And of course, here a stranger was participating in our little ritual, and then someone began to play a song, and then everyone began to sing. And we were so moved by that, by this sudden axis of society generated by our act, that was coming together, that we knew we had to do it again. But I can tell you for a fact, if that had not happened, we would never have done it again. It would have been an isolated act. Had we put it in a gallery, or if I'd made it a private affair, we would not have been inspired to do it again. That is when Burning Man began. If you seek for its origins, look for it in the flaming figure and the man and the people gathered around it, and the community that it instantly engendered, and that's when Burning Man began.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess that's all the questions we have for you today.
Great.
But thanks much, sir.
Thank you very much.
And boy, I just hope that you can continue this as long as possible. This is truly a tremendous thing. We're just trying to show the people of Milwaukee some little glimpses of this, as much as can be captured in a camera, which is not very much, but we try our best.